To welcome the Deputy Secretary General of Cotu, Benson Okwaro. I do. It's lovely to have you. Thank you so much for making time on the program. And on his immediate right is Peter Munga, of course, a notable figure on Ebru television from the Kenya National Union of Teachers. Gentlemen, I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Amunga, let me just start you here on a particular note and a direct quote from your boss, that is Sosion. He said that we are here to endeavor to champion for a sustainable working environment. Since NAT has not had an ideal labor center for years where it can push for its labor rights, the union will use the ready support from Cotu because that will provide platform. To what extent?
Cotu is an established organization. Cotu has been here since 1965 and even beyond. Before Cotu, actually, there was Kenya Federation of Workers with the people like Tom Mboya. So Cotu is the mother, is the father of trade unionism right now in Kenya. It's a labor center. It is the one where once you affiliate with Cotu, you are sure of strong backing. You are sure of strong leadership. You are sure of a strong structure that is going to propel you into better things. Okay. So NAT was pushed out of Cotu in 1965. And the excuse was that teachers are provided essential services and they're not supposed to be part of a strong labor center like Cotu. So teachers were told, and the other people like civil servants and doctors, they were removed from Cotu in 1965 through bad legislation, of course. Okay. But as days have gone by and we have a new constitution, we as workers of this country, we have eyes and we have ears. We know who is strong and who is a person we should identify with. And that person is none other than Cotu. So in layman's terms, it's generally a re-establishment of an already established relationship. Yes. And that in this regard, this company or this formation is definitely going to be propelling your agendas. Yes. Okay. Okay, let me now come to Benson and Okwaro. You are in a perfect position, of course, and your boss today spoke of, among other array, a whole host of issues because there is an echo chamber of other developments across the country. But when NAT comes on board, how important is it in terms of now acting as a springboard towards the attainment of what you normally lobby for, the rights of workers across the country? How further will they enable you get more responsibility with regards to now you even making your voices heard more with regard to the sense of now the sound reflection that we want to hear, that you will not only be championing the rights of specific or segmented audience, but now NAT brings in another challenge that you need to raise the bar high.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like my colleague has just mentioned, this is just NAT is coming back to the original home. The split was actually engineered with political game at that time in 1965, and I think the government that have followed have made sure that NAT and the civil servants will never be part of Cotu. And despite the fact that we have been trying all the time to try to bring ourselves together, we have worked together, as you are aware, when there are issues affecting teachers. We have never abandoned them because they are not our affiliates. We have always followed up with them. But I think there was a point in time when the government, then the current Jubilee government, when the minister for, the then Minister for Labor, Kambi, Kazungu Kambi, decided for reasons best known to him to ensure that there was a split within the student fraternity in this country. So then he encouraged the civil servants together with teachers to form their own center, which was called Poseto then. And then after the solution of Poseto, then they changed the name to UC. But as Cotu, we decided that we cannot abandon any sector of the workers in this country. So we have continued working together. And for us in Cotu, we realized that the coming of NAT into Cotu will make our setup a little bit more formidable, be able to advocate for workers' rights in this country. We are aware, and in the larger African continent, that there has been the government's trying to make labor centers smaller so that they don't have the power of bargain. And this has happened in very many countries, including South Africa, that had one of the largest unions in Africa. But because of the government interference, they were able to split. They had a split in Uganda the other day, and many other countries. So when that comes on board, we are excited as Cotu, because we believe that we can put our ideas collectively and be able to advocate for the rights of Kenyan workers.
Okay, and perhaps form that formidable force going forward. Peter Munga, let me seek some clarity here with regards to a case of robbing one and, you know, I mean, out with the old, in with the old. I mean, no change in the status quo. Because after the formation of the Trade Union Congress, TUC-KE was launched in 2014. Of course, some of the people, the brains behind that was Sosion, of course, your SG of Knut. He pulled out of the Trade Union Congress in August 2018, 4 years later. Barely, it was just an embryonic organization 4 years after its formation, following differences in labor issues. TUK will sit pretty much comfortable and say, yes, you have broken up this relationship to seek another relationship elsewhere, which might not be healthy, according to them.
Yes, but Trade Union Congress of Kenya, which is TUC, actually depended on Knut. Knut was giving them even accommodation. Their offices and everything else was actually based at the Knut headquarters. So basically, TUC, or Trade Union Congress of Kenya, was more dependent on Knut than anybody else. They were not helping Knut at all. Actually, TUC was a liability to Knut. It was not an asset. Knut was only, it was not even a symbiotic relationship. It was a parasitic relationship, because TUC was more of, just kind of getting things from Knut. But with the coming of Cotu, and maybe let me also add this, the strong voice of laborers has been Cotu. TUC was an experiment, and a bad experiment for that matter. Because as it was coming out, it was more, as my colleague puts it, it was more of a diversionary gesture. It was something to kind of divide the workers. It was not a good thing. It was brought actually by the government. And so Knut has grown bold. Knut is bold and has decided to walk out of that kind of bad parasitic relationship. So, and I don't think TUC will survive, because Cotu has, before Knut joined them, they have had 2.9 million affiliated members, all the affiliated trade unions. With the coming of Knut, they now moved to 3.2 million. So that's a very strong organization. Civil servants in this country who are in TUC and maybe members of the lecturers in this country, they're less than 20,000. So we are saying TUC may not really survive this onslaught.
Okay, now, before I come to Okwaro, let me seek some clarity with regards to that, because you have given me an array of issues. I just wanted to know where specifically the problem was, because it's also pointed out that they have been using your promises since 2014, the date of establishment, but at some point they also threatened to slap it with rent arrears. And clearly, if they view you are now cordial relationship with, the new form or alliance, or some sense of the, elbowing of TUC and coming or bringing on board the new partner that is Cotu, then they might feel some sense of, dissatisfaction and uncertainty. They might be disheartened on what really caused the problem. But why walk out of an embryonic relationship to go into, or seek rather, an already established relation with a giant organization or movement like Cotu?
Actually, teachers needed a stable homestead. But just to put up on what you're saying, on, just to pick on it, the problem at TUC was not that Knut walked out. Actually, the Assistant Secretary General of TUC wrote a letter to the Secretary General, who is Sosion, and complaining that Sosion was busy, was involved with the teachers' issues more than with the TUC. The letter was actually malicious. When we looked at the letter, we saw this was kind of an attack, an affront on their own Secretary General. So I think Knut must have realized that this outfit called TUC was not good for the teachers and was not serving their interest. And then, of course, with the new constitution, a person is free to go to where you are wanted. So this kicking out, or actually being removed from TUC, is not Knut walking out. TUC had its own issues. They think Sosion is too strong a leader, and they were a bit scared of him, and they were now starting to serve him with funny letters that I don't think were palatable with members.
Inconsequential, according to Knut.
Yes.
Okay, Benson Okwaro, you have mentioned the fact that you have been at the forefront always, ever since the formation of Cotu, to agitate, to advocate, to always amplify the voices of labor or laborers or workers across the country. But equally, there are some who feel that your organization is also bringing in some sense of monopoly, because some look like the embryonic formation of TUC just collapsed because there hasn't been no efficient relationship between NATSE, which is a movement, and TUC. Being an established movement, do you see also being a monopoly organization in the sense that you have been at the forefront, yes, but also in terms of your structures, in terms of the changes, in terms of what you put forth, you still also are one of the big, but there are no growing movements like you, and you're in your style rather to roll out the affairs of workers across the country?
I think the issue here is that we have a belief for a long time that once you have a strong and a united labor force in any given country, then it serves the purpose for which it was formed. Look at, I've given an example of Nigeria labor movement, where there's only one national center. Go to Britain, go to Germany, they have the Verdi. And they are strong because they advocate, they come together, they put their money, their funds together, and they'll be able to advocate for workers' issues. We do not mind, because there's democracy in this country, they can form as many centers as they can. But is it going to serve the interests of the workers? We also don't mind if there are centers that would be established for their own purposes of serving the interests of the workers. But in our case, TUC was formed for the purpose of destabilizing Cotu that the government felt was a little too strong to handle. And I think that was the issue. And it only came during the time of Kazungu Kambi. After that, you have not seen anything, any movement going on. Where dock workers walked into TUC, they have since come back to Cotu. The doctors' union was formed, the nurses' union was formed. Those are giant unions in this country. They are all affiliated to Cotu. So who then remains? The local government, the county government workers' union is in Cotu. So what does TUC remain with after the departure of NAT? For us, we did not get NAT to come to us so that we weaken TUC. But there was a need for us to work together with them, because teachers is quite an important institution in this country. And the NAT, most of the times they have had problems. Remember when Sosian was arrested, we are the people who walked into there. They were not our office, but we walked to DCIO's offices and we demanded for his release, and it has happened. Remember last year when there was controversy about whether they should be in parliament or not, the only voice that fought for them was Cotu. We were out there to fight for them. We have attended all their congresses that they've had, the ADCs they've had. I've been attending all of them except the one that was there last year. And we have worked together with them. We have worked together with Kupet and everybody else. So as far as we're concerned, Kupet is in Cotu now, Nat is in Cotu now. It is not because we want to weaken other centers. We are saying let's come up one center. There is all the positions which they can share together with us. We should be able to articulate workers' issues when we're working together. You don't have to have 10 centers so that you advocate for workers' rights.
Okay, and possibly that might have even acted as the sweetener or the enticing factor to bring NAT on board with regards to its dalliance recently with, Cotu, following its joining of the movement or the organization. But coming to what has been ailing the teaching fraternity in the country, on specifically to be the teachers' strike, which is in some way ends up to be in some sense of perpetual continuity every time when schools reopen across the country. We have had the strikes. If these strikes in January 2019 were not averted, then it will have had consequences across schools in the country. But equally, how does your current relationship with Cotu, that you believe is going to be tit for tat, symbiotic, this way, that way, which is going to be beneficial, which is going to be mutual rather, is going to further, be a major component in the industrial movement of Kenya with regards to the union movement and also agitation for the rights of workers in Kenya, not only specifically confining ourselves in our borders, but also have the African touch and the Pan-Africanism movement in the sense that it's going to be a continental affair? Actually,
that's a wonderful question. Cotu comes in with a lot of wisdom. As you can just see, even seated next to Benson Okwaro here, the Deputy Secretary General, you will just see wisdom. And apart from that, Okwaro here is among the conciliators who are actually helping Knut come up and with the Teacher Service Commission
Okay.
to come up with an amicable solution to the problems that are there. I think what teachers have been wanting is a listening voice, a fatherly voice, a person who they can talk to, who can understand what they need and what they want. Teachers in this country have been actually the worst paid. They provide a very essential service, but the payment is very small, very low. Let me use those kind of words. And Cotu, affiliating with Cotu, gives teachers a stronger voice, a fatherly voice. When you come across the Secretary General of Cotu, Mr. Tuoli, he's an international figure. He's respected globally. And that's, I like what you have actually said in your question. Knut is going to benefit. He's going to tap into this. You see, like TUC was not even affiliated, had not very strong relations with ILO, International Labour Organization, which Cotu has. Cotu has those structures. Cotu has training college like the Tomboya Labour College in Kisumu. It's a big institution that offers team building and labor teachings. So, you know, Knut now comes in and taps from this kind of good resources that Cotu has. And I believe even this issue of perennial strike threats may even be solved now with the joining of with Cotu, because Cotu will be able to give a fatherly advice. Now, Cotu has made it very clear they will not interfere with the running, the day-to-day running of a trade union like Knut. But obviously, as an overseer, they have a lot of stake and a lot of advice they can give.
Okay. Now, and that is in 1966. They left. These guys left you. Not
65.
left. 65. Yeah, towards the end of 65.
Yes.
And now they have come back years later. That's about more than half a century. And in terms of now, you established infrastructure, you established hierarchy and systems that have been working ever since that, because not only the kick-starting point of Tom Mboya, but also your agitation has been continuous ever since in post-independent Kenya. How will you be the pointer in this case with regards to going forward? Because they also have these perennial sort of problems after every term ends and schools across the country are scheduled to reopen with regards to the collective bargaining agreement, teachers' welfare programs, good working environment.
Promotions.
How are you taking up this challenge when it comes to, agitating now on a specific note for Knut, because they have had this sense of cycles of problems that have not been addressed sufficiently, and there has been no adequate attention to such problems?
Let me tell you, I think there's been a little bit of a problem because of that disaffiliation that happened in 1965. The governments that have been on have been able to just give what we would call roadside declarations. They will come and agree when there are strikes and maybe look 20%. You remember the famous 100% in 1997, which took a lot of time before it was completely paid. So through the advice that we have been given on the sides, even if they were not our members, is that it was important for Knut to have a collective bargaining agreement, which we are glad they achieved in the year 2017. So today we have in place a collective bargaining agreement which is going for a period of 4 years now. It means therefore that there are no issues, even if you look at the current problem that they have no issues regarding remuneration. There are only issues about promotions, transfers, etc. So those are issues that can be easily addressed. So we're looking forward. Like my brother here has rightly said, we have facilities like the Turin Labour College in Italy. We have the Tomboya Labour College, which they can utilize to do better training. We have, we'll bring them on board. They will be part of the Cotu fraternity. Remember, we are currently 44 affiliates in Cotu. So Knut is going to be the 45th affiliate. All of us, like for example, I belong to the Communication Workers Union. That is my union. So I do my union issues independently from Cotu. It's only when I want advice that I go to Cotu where I need some protection. But otherwise, I work independently. And we expect Knut to also work independently with their own constitution. But when they have issues that will need some guidance, economic guidance, political, that's when Cotu comes in. Because we have within the center economies, we have legal officers, everybody else. So that's the additional advantage that they will have when they come to Cotu.
In the best interest of time, because my director is telling me that we are running out of time, we need to continue with the news bulletin. In the end program, in a summary note, briefly, Peter Munga, let's start with you. Going forward then, I'm sure you must be thinking about hurdles on the way, the long winding route ahead for this relationship. How can you assure that it's not going to be all about a marriage of convenience, but one that will end in the best interest of workers and teachers, to be specific, across the country?
When we look at it as the members of Knut, or teachers look at the relationship, they see a future. Because Cotu has remained on course. We've not seen Cotu, deviate from the course or the calling that they have. And so teachers, and Knut for that matter, are looking at this relationship as a long-going one. It's a process, and it's not just an event.
Okay.
What we saw today is a process that's going to take place and it's going to go on.
Okay.
And apart from that, Knut needs a lot of guidance, and I think this is the time. But most important, the Knut Secretary General, Wilson Sosion, is a very strong advocate of workers. So he comes into a team that also has got strong advocates of workers like Benson Okwaro here. So Sosion is coming into a society of equals, among equals. And so I think for now, Sosion feels comfortable. And teachers are feeling comfortable that Knut is now with people who are actually what we can say birds of a feather flock together.
Okay, Benson Okwaro, briefly and final comments. Is it going to be a win-win situation?
Well, I think for us, we are very happy that Knut has come on board. We think that they have some knowledge that they will add to us. They also have the experience that we can add to Cotu. And what makes it very interesting to us, that we shall be talking from one point as a labor center, and that will be able to set example for other neighboring countries like Tanzania and like Uganda, where we have also facilitated the merger. There was Cotu and Knut, we put them together. Even in Tanzania, put Tukta together. So we are trying to make forward working unions within the African continent, and we think that it is not an issue of positions, it's not an issue of egos, it's an issue of having the labor center working together. And we are inviting all other, particularly the civil servants, to join us, because they were part of us also until they ran away. So we want them back, and we'll make a formidable working union, and we are going to accommodate all of them in the Cotu, because Cotu house is big.
Yes. Very big for that matter.
Very big for that
matter. Gentlemen, I will end it there, but thank you so much for your sentiments and your perfect perspective with regards to the shared sentiments. I do thank you, Peter Munga from the Kenya National Union of Teachers, Knut, and Benson Okwaro, deputizes. That is Cotu boss Francis Atwoli. He is the Deputy Secretary General of the biggest labor movement, if not in Africa, in Kenya.